Was Oscar Piastri really to blame for his accident in Brazil? Or was he a collateral victim of his own team's success? It all started in the sprint of the 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix, a race marked by climate uncertainty and the accumulated tension of a championship that advances with each point as if it were gold. The José Carlos Pace Autodrome, better known as Interlagos, woke up that Saturday to a sky that had shed rain throughout the early morning. The result was a track with mixed conditions, not wet enough to justify the extreme tires, but also not dry enough to race with absolute confidence. That gray, treacherous strip was the scene where one of the most tense moments of the season took place. In this context, Oscar Piastri had achieved an outstanding classification. He started third, only behind his teammate Lando Norris and the young phenomenon Kimi Antonelli, representing Mercedes. From the green light, the Australian remained calm, clinging to that position as if each centimeter of the track was one more step towards consecration. The season had been a roller coaster for him, with recent ups and downs requiring a solid performance. And during the first laps, everything seemed under control. But when the car rolls on the edge of adhesion, every decision weighs. Every curve is a coin toss. Lap 6 marked the breaking point. In turn 3, known as the Senna S, Piastri tried to maintain his usual line, touching the inside apex. But what his eyes couldn't see was the thin layer of water that had settled right there, on the inside curb. An invisible trap. When he touched it, his MCL39 reacted as if he had stepped on ice. In a matter of seconds, the car made a sharp turn with no possibility of correction. The impact against the barriers was sharp, violent, inevitable. And with it, 6 key points for their fight for the championship disappeared. The most shocking thing is that he was not the only one. Just moments later, Nico Hülkenberg, Sauber driver, repeated almost the same mistake. And it wasn't long before Alpine's Franco Colapinto also ended up out of the race at exactly the same point. The Argentine's accident was so severe that it forced a red flag and the sprint to be stopped for more than 20 minutes to repair the damaged barriers. These coincidences began to build a pattern. It was not normal for 3 cars with 3 different driving styles to make exactly the same mistake on the same lap. Formula One leaves no room for naive coincidences, and the questions soon began. What had changed on that return? Why did that curb suddenly become a minefield? The perfect surface for a storm was not just the wet asphalt of Interlagos. It was the sum of pressures, aggressive strategies, overwhelmed expectations and minimal errors that, under extreme conditions, exact a very high price. At that moment, McLaren not only lost valuable points. He also began to lose, little by little, the internal balance that had sustained his dominance throughout the season. What was initially classified as an individual error by Oscar Piastri began to show a much more nuanced reality as the data began to be analyzed in greater depth. Because in Formula One, errors do not exist in a vacuum. Everything is interconnected. The track, the weather, the car, the strategy decisions, and also the movements of the rivals even when those rivals have the same logo on their racing suit. The trigger for doubt did not come from McLaren but from Mercedes. It was Kimi Antonelli, the young Italian talent who had been chasing Lando Norris in second position, who reported on the radio an observation that would change the focus of the analysis completely. During lap 6, just before Piastri's accident, Antonelli had seen how Norris forcefully took the inside curb of turn 3. What happened next was decisive. Norris' car raised a cloud of stagnant water that not only soaked part of the track, but also directly hit Antonelli's own visor. Even so, the young man from Mercedes managed to stay within the track thanks to a precise maneuver. Others, like Piastri, were not so lucky. Here a rare but absolutely decisive phenomenon comes into play in mixed conditions: the displacement of water by aerodynamic action. When a Formula One car hits a wet curb at high speed, there is not only the risk of losing traction. It can also raise a curtain of residual water that, with the combination of its diffuser, the rear wing and the car's rake, remains briefly suspended in the air before falling on the track. If this happens at the exact moment that another car is about to pass, the track that was in acceptable condition suddenly becomes a point of total loss of grip. Telemetry and subsequent videos soon confirmed what Antonelli had perceived. Lando Norris, without any intention of harming his teammate, had taken an aggressive line that would normally be valid in dry conditions or even in qualifying. But that day that line crossed exactly through a wet area. By touching that curb, the action of his car had contaminated the racing line for those coming behind. And Piastri was the first to find that invisible trap. Sky Sports was one of the first media to put words to the dilemma. Had Norris been responsible, albeit indirectly, for Piastri's accident? And how is that responsibility managed within a team that is fighting for both championships, with two drivers capable of winning races? When Norris was asked directly about the incident, his response was honest, but also somewhat evasive. He admitted to touching the curb, he admitted to seeing water shooting onto the track, but he left it there. That was it, he said. As if that everything couldn't be the origin of one of the most critical moments of the weekend. This is where silent guilt begins to weave. There were no internal accusations. There were no accusations in public. But there was a technical truth that everyone within McLaren understood. That accident was not the exclusive responsibility of Oscar. And although Lando had no intention of harm, the fact is that his course had consequences. When Oscar Piastri got out of the car after the accident, his body language said more than any post-race interview. There were no screams. There was no uncontrolled frustration. Just silence. One that was heavy. One who knew. Because within McLaren, everyone understood that what happened at Turn 3 had not been just a matter of bad luck. And yet, no one said it out loud. That was the beginning of what could become a fissure within the team. Complicit silence. Tom Stallard, Piastri's race engineer, was the first voice on the radio after the accident. His tone was professional, measured, almost clinical. He appreciated the effort, asked for calm, assured that the important thing was that the pilot was well. However, it was Andrea Stella, the team director, who spoke to the media. He did it with the mastery of a veteran who understands not only cars but narratives. He recognized Lando Norris' performance as a success and Piastri's as a missed opportunity. And then he elegantly reduced the incident to an inevitable phenomenon under extreme conditions. It happened to three drivers at the same spot on the track. It's just unfortunate, he said. And that phrase remained floating in the air like a collective absolution. McLaren, for its part, is experiencing a dilemma. Because having two drivers capable of winning races is a blessing, until they start fighting over the same thing. Team decisions become more difficult. Strategic priority becomes ambiguous. Who do you favor when both are equally talented, but one makes an unintentional mistake that ends up affecting the other? How long can you maintain harmony before competitiveness turns into confrontation? Lando Norris did not commit an infraction. He didn't disobey an order. He did not act with intent to harm. And yet, his aggressive driving style, his line at that precise moment, had consequences that directly altered the performance of the other papaya car. It is that type of detail that turns Formula One into a game of chess at 300 kilometers per hour. Every movement, every curb touched, every drop of water raised, can end up ruining not just a lap, but an entire championship strategy. And this is where the story takes on a larger dimension. Because while the world looks forward with an eye toward the next race, the true effects of this moment will remain inside the McLaren garage. In every technical meeting. In each classification strategy. In every private conversation between engineers, team managers, and drivers. The harmony that seems solid begins to show signs of tension. Not because of an open conflict, but because of an accumulation of small silences, of technical decisions that favor one or the other, of readings between the lines that each pilot and his environment store. And now, I leave you with one last thought. If you were the director of McLaren, how would you handle this situation? Would you defend equality between both drivers, or would you start building your campaign around just one of them? Do you think what we saw in Brazil was just an isolated incident, or the first crack of an inevitable fracture? Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.